Today, I'm joined by the CEO and founder of Digits, David Glaza. Welcome, Dave.
Hello, glad to be here. Really, for us, it's showcasing what we do that works. I would tell you how many stories I have of, we'll get a referral, let's say from a friend, like we live in town, so a lot of people know, like if you're launching into Target, they're like, oh, you guys should do some retail media. And my buddy Dave leads up this agency, you guys should talk. So we'll talk, and then they'll be like, oh, I don't want to spend money there. Like we're just gonna focus in and get on the shelf. And then 4 months later, they email us and say, we're not hitting our sales targets. We should do something. And then 2 months later, they're off the shelf. Because Target brings in a lot of new brands, they figure out what works, what doesn't work. How do we get new clients is really by showcasing the wins that we do have and the return on investment that brands are getting, and how are they attracting new customers using this media. You can't just put your product on a shelf anymore and expect that the customer is going to walk down the aisle and go, oh, that green box didn't used to be there last time I came here. Let me pick it up and look at it. This doesn't work. And so you need to find a way to tell your potential customers that you're there.
Welcome to the Deep Specialization Podcast, the show where we blend focus, strategy, and client intimacy in order to scale and simplify our businesses and our lives. I'm your host, Corey Quinn. Let's jump into the show. Super excited for our conversation. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and the agency that you work for, Digits?
Yeah, Digits, we are an independent retail media agency. We've been around now for 8 years, actually 8-year birthday on Monday, coming April. Based out of Minneapolis, do a ton of work in grocery, omni-channel retail. Prior to this, I can give you my full background, but prior to this worked as a merchant and marketer at Target.
Interesting. I know the backstory here, so I think that there must be some relationship between that employment and what you've done here with Digits. Just for context for listeners, what could you share about the agency in terms of number of employees or number of clients or revenue, anything you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, we're independent, so we're still pretty niche. We're about 15 employees at this point. And so we've been, like I said, around for 8 years. It started as just me. I mean, when I left and founded it, it was just me, 100% owner. And so built it with, sort of one FTE, if you will, and have sort of scaled it out as our revenues and context have grown. Added resources as we've built our business and needed more people to do the work and add expertise to the business.
Well, let's jump into the months leading up to starting your agency. You said you were at Target. What was your role there at Target?
Yeah, I was at Target a full 14 years. Target hires a lot of people straight out of college, and so I started there when I was a 21-year-old kid. Most of my time there was spent as a merchant. So Target hires new people as business analysts and buyers. So I was a buyer for many years. And then really for me, the flip in my career, the turning point to brought me more to where I am now was internally promoted and got a role over on Target's Cartwheel team. So Cartwheel, now called Target Circle, if the shoppers are familiar, it is their coupon platform. And 12 years ago now was very forward thinking as far as how to deliver mobile coupons to shoppers via a mobile app. And then drive you to get use your feet and walk into the store based on what you saw with your phone. And so for me, that taught me everything about, not everything, but a lot of things about digital, right? Digital grocery, digital marketing, digital omni-channel retail. And so I did that for 4 years, launched out that program for Target, ran it for a couple of years. And then, your time question was, the last couple of months before, starting Digits was, I wasn't sure what I wanted to keep doing with my career at Target, whether or not I wanted to keep exploring sort of an upward career path at Target. But I would say the Cartwheel program at the time was so new and was so successful. Like we hit our 5-year plan within the first year, and then it kept growing that, I knew that personally had a lot of expertise in something that was new and growing and building, and saw a market opportunity to try to build something. Admittedly, I would say I wasn't fully sure where it was going to go or what it was, successful, right? But I kind of owed it to myself, I think, to explore it. And so that was the mindset, kind of right leading up to that spot.
And so you transitioned out of Target. And at that point, did you just start up an agency? Was it primarily the focus at that time was agency, or were you doing something else?
No, that was the focus. That was, that was the promise to myself, and sort of, my wife and family, right? You go from a nice salaried corporate role where you get a
Safe.
paycheck every
Yep.
2 weeks,
Yep.
right? To zero, right? Pretty quickly when you're, out as an entrepreneur of one. And so, I started up right away, really with the idea of, being super smart on target and digital and on the coupon platform is, how do I at the time take that expertise and help others do better within that niche?
And so, how did you, when you launched, did you have confidence that you were going to be able to leverage that expertise and those relationships to land clients, or how did the first client come around?
Yeah, I mean, I had good network from kind of my old days, so I had people that I could reach out to, and I think one of the things that I felt really good about was that I knew enough people that I would be able to have those initial conversations. I wrote down a list of names of 10, 20 people that I thought would write me back. And like, if I quit and offer this service, would I get some meetings, right? And first client wasn't necessarily on that list, right? But like, being able to talk to that many people about what you're building and creating helps you build your business model and your services and your pricing and everything. That kind of got the ball rolling.
Okay. Could you help kind of share what your ICP or ideal customer profile was at that time? Like, who are the people on that 20-person list? What type of businesses did they represent?
Yeah. So again, with, the model was target digital, at least that's the business we're helping to support. So these are CPG companies that are selling products into Target. So that's, from the biggest in the world of Procter and Gamble to, a chip brand to, one of our kind of initial clients was a company called Hain Celestial, which sells veggie straws and baby food, Earth's Best, that sort of stuff. Anybody selling millions of dollars of product into Target, would be kind of the people we were going after. And so again, ranging from the largest CPGs in the world to maybe more your mid-size or your smaller CPGs where, we know some people.
And you were able to get them into the Circle program. Was that part of your services, or how did that work?
The way that process works is it's not eligible for everybody. Like, anybody that's a vendor, it's kind of like selling on Amazon. I would say, like, anybody can go set up a shop and sell on Amazon, but how do you do it right? That's more, we still are, and I at the time was, really good at, of like, sure, you can, spray and pray type approach and spend a lot of money and hope that it's working, or, do you hire an expert and do it really well within that space?
Got it. So I love the analogy of being able to sell on Amazon. But unlike myself, who's an amateur at doing that, just recently started doing that, certainly working with an expert who came from that ecosystem on the other side of the table type of thing and be able to provide that level of expertise, that makes a lot of sense. So tell me about the first couple of years as you were growing up Digits. It's been 8 years now. What did the first year look like?
Yeah, so for me, first year I was a one-man band, right? So that first couple of months was reaching out to, that list of names that I had, right? And trying to understand who would take phone calls, who would have meetings, who could help me figure out the right way to bring this to market, and maybe which CPG partners, would actually have interest. And so, this was a pre-COVID time frame. This was a pre-Google Meet and Zoom time frame. So what that meant to me physically was a lot of driving around town. Most of those people live in the Minneapolis area because, again, they're calling into Target, which that's Target's headquarters, is in Minneapolis. So it was a lot of in-person meetings, a lot of coffees, really trying to shape that out and get, those people that would be interested. Again, as an entrepreneur, started off with 0 contracts day one, picked up first business in the first couple of months. I would say at about the 6-month mark, I knew that there was enough interest here, right? Like, there was enough people and businesses that could benefit from what I was building, that it was going to be a winner.
Did you have any local competition, direct competition at the time?
Not as much, no. I mean, there, in our industry, there's a lot of brokers if you're in sort of the grocery space that'll help you get your products and sell them in. But they're more about helping you sell in your product, helping you manage purchase orders, helping you manage chargebacks, logistics, distribution. I would say the more legacy parts of like physical retail, 12 years or 8 years ago, they hadn't developed expertise around digital marketing. That was considered more, I'd say, of like an add-on or an optional type service. And so definitely we're the only ones in that space kind of when we launched.
It's a good place to be. And so at what point did you hire your first employee and what did they do?
First, did it with contractors, I would say, sort of like, and not to draw a delineation there, but like we, met honestly former Target friends. Actually met a couple of Target friends that either had gotten laid off or had maybe quit to, raise a family, and then we're looking to get back into it. And so for me, it worked out really well to sort of lean into it partway, where somebody was looking to get back into corporate work of sorts and wanted 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week or whatnot. And so my first person, we did that. I think she was about 10, 20 hours a week and really helped me organize even like business development and like reaching out on LinkedIn and emailing people and trying to like put some structure around that, where I was probably a little bit more scattershot in that part of the business. And then over time grew to like help out on accounts. So once we had enough business that I couldn't manage all of the accounts, that first and then second hire started to do that.
Do you have a full-time salesperson on staff today?
You're looking at it. And so, no, that has still been more of a founder function, I would say, than like a dedicated sales business.
And why do you think that is?
As starting out as your own, like you are the sales arm, right? You're the one that knows it. You know the business model. I am a content expert or a strategy expert, and even what we're selling, right? And so in some ways, Digit's contracts are contracts with me. At least that's the way they were, right? Over time, it's become more obviously of an organization. We're bigger. And I think yet we just haven't found the right way to translate that into like a dedicated salesperson. Yeah. So today it is still me.
Yeah. And I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I talk to a lot of agency owners who are very happily founder-led when it comes to sales. There's no challenge in that. And in some respects, they want to keep it that way. They like working with the clients and in that capacity. So I think that makes sense. I'm curious, how big is your total addressable market? Like how many businesses out there would be a good target for you to work with?
I mean, I was just at a conference, retail media, which is what we do, is a $54 billion a year industry. So
that's in spend.
Now, is that all addressable? Is that all addressable is a good question, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
That's the industry.
Yeah.
Target specifically, retail media is a $1.5 billion industry. Now, that's not obviously addressable, but that's the size of that's how much money vendors are spending, right?
Yep.
And so what percentage of that would they pay an agency to help them spend it better is a way to, think of it. But that's how much money is in the market now, which has grown significantly versus 8 years ago when I started the business.
I can imagine. And so 1.5 is the sort of the wallet. That's what's being spent in target-based media. So it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you able to translate that into number of businesses, or does that not really make sense because it's based on a product? Or how do you think about like the
that would be as many CPGs. So there's hundreds of CPGs that sell into Target, right? Anything from Tide, right, as P&G, as I said before, to somebody selling a brand of cottage cheese or a pet toy or whatnot. If you walk around a Target store, it's probably thousands. I probably would have to do the math, but it's at least in the hundreds of different CPGs that are selling.
Is there a category of those products that are sort of have relatively more spend than others? Like where are the dollars? Is there a subset of products that represent that?
Yeah, for us, it's the national brands. So saying it a different way, like For us as an agency, there's no money helping Target's own brands business. So like a Good and Gather or a apparel business, if you're familiar to Target, they have like a Cat and Jack brand, right? Like Target manages all that. So that's all sort of out. But business-wise, food is a great business because they're always launching new products. They're always trying to increase household consumption. They're always trying to get, new houses to try their product. So for us, that means those companies always have marketing budgets, right, to try to accomplish those goals. So food's great, pets is good, beauty brands, vitamins, essentials, all those companies, have dedicated marketing budgets to try to launch new products or acquire new shoppers, even for existing products. So
awesome. So there's quite a bit of spend there. And I imagine today it's a little bit more crowded than it was 8 years ago with regard to the specialty that you have.
Yeah, it is. I had mentioned rep groups before. Like some of those rep groups have now tried to add on services in the space. Yeah. But then even for them, like they're not specialists, right? They're still doing the 10, 12 things they were doing before, and then are now also trying to do this. And so I would say some have been more successful than others as far as building the right capabilities. You also have some, we talked about Amazon. Like Amazon's a huge business. Of that 54 billion, they're a big piece of it. And so there's agencies like ours that maybe spun up around the same time, but focusing on Amazon, right? Like you said, you started selling something there, right? There are probably thousands of Amazon agencies that could run it for you, right, for a cost and do good work. Some of them have tried to kind of come down market, I would say, or into a physical market, into helping brands with Kroger's and Walmart's and Targets of the world. So that, our competition is sort of those two angles have kind of come into our world within that space.
So if you're talking to a CPG, maybe they have a food product that they want to deploy into the Target-based approach. How do you differentiate? Like, how do you differentiate in those sales conversations from these other options?
Yeah, for us, it really is just still our Target expertise. And so, which works great for us in two ways. One, if they're so big that their Target dollars are meaningful, right? Like they're just a really big business. And so they're okay hiring a specialist, let's say at Target, and then a different specialist at Amazon, and a different specialist somewhere else, because their business is just so big that they need to be the best everywhere. Or obviously if somebody's only launched at Target, if they're, a smaller brand and let's say Target's really important to them. We've struggled more in the middle if somebody does good business at Target, but not good enough. And they just sort of want one agency for all, if you will. Yep. And they maybe realize that agency isn't as good at everything, but they still only want to talk to one person, right? And they kind of hire a generalist instead of a specialist that way.
How do you attract new retail media clients?
Really, for us, it's showcasing what we do that works, right? Like I would tell you how many stories I have of, we'll get a referral, let's say from a friend. Like we live in town, so a lot of people know, like if you're launching into Target, they're like, oh, you guys should do some retail media. My buddy Dave leads up this agency. You guys should talk, right? So we'll talk, and then they'll be like, oh, I don't want to spend money there. We're just going to focus in and get on the shelf. And then 4 months later, they email us and say, we're not hitting our sales targets. We should do something. And then 2 months later, they're off the shelf because, Target brings in a lot of new brands. They figure out what works, what doesn't work, they get rid of. And so I guess how do we get new clients is really by showcasing the wins that we do have and the return on investment that brands are getting, and how are they attracting new customers using this media. Can't just put your product on a shelf anymore and expect that the customer is going to walk down the aisle and go, oh, that green box didn't used to be there last time I came here. Let me pick it up and look at it. Like just doesn't work. And so you need to find a way to tell your customers or your potential customers that you're there.
Yeah. So what's the right way to do that? I'm curious.
It's a different tactics. We have a full flywheel at Target from sending you ads on your phone, like on the bus, right? Like if we know if you're a shopper that likes to shop Target and we can go find you on your phone, or through Target has methods, right? Like they've got paid search ads, they've got coupons, they've got digital shelf. So there's about 5 or 6 main tactics, and we'll ebb and flow those based on the brand, the budget, and kind of the goals of what that person's trying to do.
You mentioned referrals are important. Are there other ways that people find you in their journey to hire a specialist agency?
Yeah, two for us. Probably our most best performing is just LinkedIn. And so having a really robust LinkedIn profile, being active, being as much of a thought leader and commenter and poster as you can be within your space has, I've done that I've tried to do my best for like 8 years, right? Like since we launched. I think it ebbs and flows with how active, I am.
Sure.
But, that's been our best performing marketing channel, if you will. And then beyond that, it's, we just relaunched our website, trying to make sure that that's up and running. But for us, that's a little bit more of a landing page of somebody that's already found us.
Yeah.
Maybe they're searching for target expert agency in Google and it pops up, but not a lot of people are typing that into Google. And so, it's about finding people via LinkedIn and other ways.
Are you finding on LinkedIn, is it mostly organic? So you're posting content and engaging that stuff, or are you also doing ads?
We aren't doing paid ads. No, I mean we've done a few experiments, but we're not today. I mean the network we play in as a specialist is pretty tight. Like you're all in like circles of knowledge, like circles of friendship or what circles of network,
like
however you want to say it.
6 degrees, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's just putting a lot of content. I mean, most new clients we get will say something like, "Oh, I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn for a while."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not like they might come to us unsolicited, but they saw us post something 6 months ago that they remember, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to track it say that way, right? Always from like an ROI because it's not a direct click type thing. But building your knowledge and expertise within a niche, especially being so niche, it has been what's been most effective for us.
So is it you're providing valuable content? It's obviously related to the specific problems you solve. They consume the content. They may engage, they may not, but at some point, when they have a need, they'll reach out to you. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's at least the way it's been for us. So we try to push them as much as we can to get them to reach out, but you can't talk to everybody, and not everybody's ready, right? Like sometimes at least for us, the close rate obviously is higher if somebody comes to you. Right. Then
no friction.
Then,
just
cold calling.
Ready. Yeah. Do you have like an email newsletter or any other type of content that you or any other channels you leverage?
Yeah, we do. For the last couple of years, we've had a client newsletter, but that's again for active clients. Yeah. That was born out of COVID to provide a little color. That didn't really exist, and then when COVID came and upset everything, but specifically even like grocery shopping, which is our niche, right? We started sending out. I was like, oh, I got to use MailChimp or something to start sending out notes to people a lot faster, right? Than just like normal email. And then that's sort of grown into like more of an official newsletter. And then we do have like a prospect newsletter for people that, have expressed interest in digits, but maybe aren't active clients today. So we use that to sort of keep them, from a prospecting point of view, keep them warm, give them bits of information, hopefully, get them to a point that they actually want to work with us in a paying capacity.
You mentioned a conference that you were at recently. How important are sort of conferences and associations to your work?
I'd give them a mid. I mean, I do maybe 3 conferences a year. And so really for me, it's sort of just about being part of the community, and keeping me a thought expert within this space, right? I mean, within retail media, the most active, smartest people in retail media go to the same, 2, 3, 4 conferences a year. So,
and every year, right? So you see them year in, year out. Yeah.
Yep. So it's socially being part of that community, right? It's learning even from the shows and booths and talks, what other people are doing, just to make sure that we're staying uptight on all the latest. But yeah, so I'd call it mid. Maybe you're making a contact or two, like similar to the way we talked about LinkedIn, that turns into business at some point later down the road. But it's not the kind of industry where you're signing deals at conferences, right? You're making connections that maybe later turns into business when somebody has a need that you're good at.
I love that. So 8 years now in the business, coming up on Monday. Congratulations again. It's fantastic. Looking back, what were some of the major milestones when it comes to growth over these 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, one of them you already asked on, I think, was the first hire, right? Like, how does this go from, I just need to replace my own salary type of a point of view to, we're past that, and how do we actually turn this into like an an agency, right?
Proper
Like
business,
a higher performing business that's pulling in more revenue. So that was probably the first couple years was, it was a slower growth, but we were just sort of organically growing and adding staff when we needed to. For us, the bigger growth was the changes in digital shopping after COVID. And so the way that a client phrased it to me was, pre-COVID, digital business at Target was 2% of the business. And so if they wanted to be good at digital, great. They wanted to be good at digital coupons, media, whatnot. Like it was sort of a nice to have. Fast forward to today, actually last month, it was 21% of the business.
Okay.
And so now, every brand needs to be an expert on digital, and because it's 20% of the business, and that's transacted 20% of the business, not even influenced. If you went influenced, it's going to obviously be more than that. But so like everybody needs what we do now, right? Whether they do it themselves or they hire somebody else, they hire us, whatever, right? But like everybody needs the work that we do today versus when we started, if they didn't, they weren't going to notice, right? It was more of a future build thing than you wanted to get really good at and be able to stand out, but it wasn't maybe going to impact your top line in the way that it does today.
How about finding talent? And when you're out in the market trying to find people with expertise, like how have you approached that, and how has that approach changed over the years?
Yeah, when I first started, like I said, it was a lot of almost like part-timers, for me, because we were growing and trying to remain profitable while growing, and you don't want to like extend too fast, especially when it's just yourself. So because of that, it was a lot of network and a lot of, more of a friend circle type thing, or work network friend circle. And that was great. Like my best people that way. And the vast majority of them are all still, part of Digits and have become, key pieces of the team. More recently, we're not huge, but we're a little bit bigger. And so it's harder to keep finding people that you have years history with. And so we've had to open it up a little bit more. And so it's really just through posting it on LinkedIn. I just not to plug them too much, but it's putting jobs on there, and then that goes out to your network. We're still looking for people that have history sort of in our niche. And so, the best people there are the ones that, are kind of already in your circle a bit. We hired some people that way through openings. Other times somebody sees your posting as like, oh, my friend, he's really good and he needs a job. Like I'll connect you guys. And so like they might not actually officially apply, but that's the trigger, right, of what starts it out there.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Go LinkedIn. That's awesome. And then, going from a business owner, founder who has started the business, pounded the pavement, built the business, what has that transition from being sort of an owner operator to being more of an owner who has other people doing a lot of that work? Was there any challenges, or what was that like to go through that as a founder?
Yes. I'm sure it's a very common story, but it's kind of like moving up from a management point of view. You no longer try to do everything yourself. And so figuring out the right role for me, I would say changing and evolving job descriptions for my team, changing and evolving compensation structures for the team is sort of some of the hurdles we've had to jump through, right? Because, the ask of them is different, not only just the ask of me, and figuring that out. Yeah. And so, I have very much noticed that the role that I play with clients that we've had for 7 years is different than the role I play for a client that started last month. Yeah. Right. And so some of that has just happened because now, there's a different onboarding process. There's more teams versus maybe I used to run that client myself 7 years ago, and I don't run them anymore, but I'm still like involved because I used to. And so, lots of shifts and growing challenges with that.
How would you say or characterize how you've changed as a leader over these years?
I'm probably a little bit more status quo, or not, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but a little bit less knee-jerky, right? Mm-hmm. With the understanding that things are going to change, but they never change as fast as you think that they are. And, kind of hurting, not even just hurting people, but hurting messages and trying to aggregate all the messages into sort of what the real story is in a way. Probably more of a centrist, I would say that way, at least from a leadership versus, again, when it was me and like two other people, right? It used to sort of be a lot more reactionary. So.
Do you take a productized service approach to your offering, or is it more sort of a custom approach every time, or somewhere in the middle?
We try to be as productized as we can.
Mm.
So, what we do for a client on retainer, when we're in a pitch session, we'll bring them, this is what we do, it has a list of services, and say like, this is the way that we bring this to life. But at the end of the day, we're still a niche agency, so everything can be customized. As much as you need to from a brand side.
How has that evolved over the years? I imagine when you were starting, it was probably less productized
Of course.
versus
Yeah.
today. So how did that evolve, and when did productization really become important for you?
I think the bigger the team gets, right? And so, if you have more people trying to rally around a vision or a operations process, that process needs to be tighter. And so, have we built in more layers and more people? That's probably been more true over the last 2-3 years for us. On our 8-year kind of like bucket.
Makes sense. Have you ever considered going outside of retail media? Have you ever been like, enough of these, these CPG folks? I want to work with dentists. Or has that never crossed your mind?
Dentists specifically, no. But I would say the most adjacent is we're really good at Target. We have gone past that. if you look at my content on LinkedIn, that's what we talk about the most because that's what we're good at and that's where we win clients. But we have clients where we run Walmart business. We have clients where we run Kroger, so there are brands that are that have worked with us and really like what we do and say, hey, I don't just sell at Target. Can you help us other spots? Yeah. And the answer is yes, we can do that. But that's not the way that we win our business, right? We do also some work with regional grocers, so smaller chains like 100-store chains that are trying to catch up in the retail media space. And so that to me is almost more like what I did for Target almost 10 years ago, where we built a lot of this stuff for them and built that strategy. So we do that for regional grocers. The only spot where we've really said no, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit too, is Amazon, where it's just a different ball game. And sometimes you get a little bit wanty because there's so much money. Amazon's so huge and there's so much media that's kind of running through that platform that you're like, well, wouldn't it be awesome if we were really good at that? But because it's so big, there's so many agencies, right, that are really good. And so today that, we've even had some clients that are like, oh, do you guys run Amazon media? And we've said no. And so today the answer is no, we don't do that. Maybe there'll be a day that the right person will ask us and say, well, if you're willing to be our first client, we'll do it with you, right? But we'd have to go into it a little bit more eyes wide open both ways because that is something we haven't gone into yet. But
that's great. I admire your restraint in that. There's the old saying, if you say yes to this, what are you saying no to, type of thing. So, in the world of constraints and, unfortunately zero sum when it comes to resources and time, that's admirable that you're able to restrain yourself in those regards.
We'll see. If we want to be a couple 100-person agency someday, maybe we have to get there.
And I'm not saying it's not the right thing. It's just you have to be clear about what you're potentially saying no to if you say yes to that.
Right.
Are there any negatives in just from a sort of a agency growth strategy in taking a vertical approach? That come along?
Yeah, being vertical in the idea that we're retail media only, right? When I go to conferences, in some level we compete with agencies that do everything, right? And so we might work on the same brand and maybe we're impacting $1 million in media for that brand. And they have a different agency that's impacting 50 million, right? Because they do everything from billboards to Facebook to TikTok to retail media, right? And so in that world, our addressable market then is smaller to that topic we talked about earlier, right? And an individual client, if we're not doing everything for them, we can't earn as much revenue for that client. But conversely, we've been able to sign clients that there's no way we would do if we were trying to do everything with them. So we work with 5 of the top 10 biggest CPGs in the world, right? And they hire us because we're really good at what we do.
Yeah.
There's no way we could earn a contract to them to run all of their national retail media.
And I can imagine that sales process is much different for if you're trying to get the entire agency of record or whatnot for those products.
Right. And so there's pros and cons that way. We have probably more clients with smaller amounts of revenue per each than like a big I'd say a full funnel agency that, their roster's shorter, but they have, they get a lot more revenue per each of them. So that's okay. I guess there's pros and cons.
Well, I've got two more questions for you as we wrap up here. What advice would you have maybe for the 8 years ago Dave, who is just starting off, or for a lot of our listeners are going to be agency founders who are maybe generalists, maybe haven't taken have not been focused in a specific market or serving a specific audience, and they're thinking about it. What advice would you have to them?
Yeah, I mean, for us, what's worked, and I guess the advice I'd give out is just, what are you so good at that other people can't copy as much? And that's what's worked for us. I mean, we have competitors in the space now 8 years later. It's a much bigger market, but I don't believe any of our competitors do anything close to as well as we do. Like we have been experts in that. And so I assume any agency out there is really good at something. It's like, how are they focusing in on that? Have that be your tip of your spear from a content delivery. Really try to stand out within that niche. Media is so fragmented now, or even like purchase, B2B type media, that within your market, if you're the smartest / maybe most vocal or hopefully both of those things within that space, then people that need your services are going to find you, or at least say yes to you. So that I guess that would be the advice, versus being everything to everybody, is how are you like the best thing to some people.
I love that question. What can you be the best in the world at solving? What could that be for you? Last question for you, Dave. What's your motivation?
That's a good question. I'd say it was and still is sort of building something. And I think, again, 8 years ago when it was just me, it was building, can I build this business? Like, is there enough money there, like, for me to, again, replace my salary beyond that and like build something that's sort of sustainable in this space? I'd say for the last couple of years, I've taken more pride in like building a team and like building revenue for my team. And that wasn't there years ago, right? Because it was just me, I was trying to make it sustainable. But then to the larger it's gotten, have probably been more motivated on that, of like, how are we building something? The people on my team, are all like making good money, enjoying what they do, enjoying their work. We've had nearly 100% of people staying, at the company. And so being able to build a place where people want to work, enjoy their work, have work-life balance, and kind of work in the way they want to, has been something that I think has grown as a motivating factor for me, and probably will only continue to grow as, the agency keeps growing.
Wow, that's great. I'm excited for you and your future. It sounds like it's going to be very bright. Where can people reach out to you if they want to connect with you and maybe continue the conversation?
Yeah, David Glaza, LinkedIn would be the easiest way to get a hold of me. The website is just digitsagency.com, and there's forms on there to fill out if you want to contact us if it's a business interest. But at a personal level, LinkedIn is easily the best way to go.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on, Dave.
Great, thank you.
That's it for today. I'm Corey Quinn, and I hope you join me again next time on the Deep Specialization Podcast. If you received value from this show, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.